There was this moment, right after she said it, when everything in the room just kind of froze. She was standing in the doorway of my home office, arms crossed, lips curled, not in a smile, but in something close to disdain. I had just asked her if she'd be willing to skip her firm's retreat in Aspen that weekend, because I had been offered a speaking gig at a conference. A big one. Something that could have been a real turning point for my consulting business. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You were never more than a stepping stone, Nate. You got me in the door. That's it." It hit like a punch you never see coming. Not because you didn't know it was possible, but because you didn't want to believe someone you loved could hit that hard. Her voice was calm, almost rehearsed. I remember blinking, slowly, as if my mind was trying to buffer what I'd just heard. We'd been married 6 years by that point. Dated 3 before that. I met her in grad school. She was the girl who always had 2 lattes in the morning and too many post-it notes sticking out of her textbooks. Ambitious, smart, magnetic in a way that made you feel lucky just to stand beside her. I was the one with connections. My family wasn't rich, but I knew people. Mentors. Former colleagues. I introduced her to half the board at her dream company. Coached her through interviews. Paid the rent when she quit her job to prep for a director-level role. I supported her, not just emotionally, but financially and professionally, because I believed in her. And now here she was, standing in the doorway like I was a pit stop on her way to something shinier. That night, I sat in my office long after she'd left for the gym. Didn't cry, didn't yell. I just sat in silence, staring at the framed photo on my desk, our wedding day. Her in that open-back gown, me grinning like I'd just won the lottery. And maybe I thought I had. I didn't know how long it had been building, how long I'd been downgraded from partner to prop. But looking back, I can see it all now, the subtle withdrawals. The business trips where she stopped calling at night. The way her tone shifted when she talked about work, about her future. Like I wasn't part of it anymore. Like I was an old coat she meant to drop off at Goodwill. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. That's not who I am. Instead, I started building. I didn't tell her about the new client I landed that month. A tech startup that was about to secure a huge round of funding. I helped them streamline operations, position them for acquisition. When the deal closed, I walked away with equity. A lot of it. Quietly, I stopped combining our finances. I hired a discreet lawyer, moved certain assets, created new LLCs. I studied trust law at night while she watched Netflix with her AirPods in. I learned from watching her. She had used me for access. Fine. That was her game. But mine? Mine was going to be different. 3 months after that conversation in the doorway, she filed for divorce. Said it wasn't working anymore. Said we'd grown apart. I told her I agreed. She looked surprised, like she expected me to beg. Maybe she even wanted me to, if only so she could turn me down and feel like the powerful one. But I didn't give her that satisfaction. I just nodded and said I hoped we could be civil. We were on paper. The paperwork moved fast. She didn't ask for alimony. She thought she didn't need it. At that point, she was rising fast at her firm. Everyone thought she was the next big name in mergers and acquisitions. She even made one of those women-to-watch lists. She didn't watch me, though. Not really. And that was her mistake. The year after the divorce was the hardest and the most defining stretch of my life. I lived lean, poured everything into building something from the ground up. My consulting turned into venture advising. I found founders who were overlooked, undervalued. I coached them, mentored them. I earned loyalty and shares. At night, I'd walk by the old apartment building we used to live in. Lights on in the window where our bedroom used to be. Sometimes I'd wonder if she ever stood by the same window and thought about what we'd had. But I didn't linger. I kept moving. 12 months after she left, I bought into a holding group. One that had its eyes on acquiring boutique consulting and strategy firms, including the very one where she worked. She was a rising exec at the firm. I became a silent partner in the company that would soon swallow hers. She never saw it coming. The deal was inked over drinks at a rooftop bar. Fitting, considering it's where she and I had our first date. I sat across from the CEO of the acquisition firm, swirling an old-fashioned, nodding as he laid out the plan. They needed someone to oversee restructuring post-acquisition. I volunteered. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about showing her, not telling her, showing her, that I wasn't the stepping stone. I was the damn mountain. 6 weeks later, the acquisition was announced. Her name was left off the executive retention list. I heard through the grapevine that she was blindsided. She tried to negotiate a leadership role. She was offered an exit package instead. She took it, of course. Pride didn't feed you forever. 2 months after that, I was walking through the firm's new lobby, clipboard in hand, reviewing restructuring plans. She was there, sitting across from HR. Her hair was longer, her suit less sharp than I remembered. She looked up as I passed, eyes wide, lips parting slightly. "Nate?" she whispered. I stopped, turned, smiled calmly. "Good to see you." She stood up fast, clutching her purse. What are you doing here?" "I'm overseeing restructuring," I said. "This firm falls under one of my portfolios now." "You?" Her voice cracked. I nodded. "Me?" There was a long pause. Then she said something I'll never forget. "I didn't think you had it in you." I tilted my head. "That's funny. You once said I was just a stepping stone." Her face paled. I reached into the folder I was holding, pulled out a document. "I noticed your name came up on the application list," I said. "We've got a receptionist opening. Entry level. Benefits aren't great, but it's honest work. Let me know if you're interested." I held it out to her. She didn't take it. She just stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Maybe she was. I wish I could tell you she took the offer, that she swallowed her pride, filled out the paperwork, and sat behind the front desk every morning watching me walk past with my name on the glass door and hers reduced to a badge clipped to a polyester blazer. But that's not how it went. She left the building without a word. Didn't even look back. A week later, I heard she moved in with a friend in a studio downtown. The condo she'd been leasing with her new boyfriend, some guy in finance, the kind who had a standing table at all the places that mattered. Well, he didn't stick around long after the acquisition news. Apparently, his loyalty had expiration dates. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. It wasn't about watching her fall, it never was. It was about rising on my own terms. Quietly, deliberately. After she was gone, I sat in that same HR office. Empty now. Just me and a folder full of applications from strangers who had no idea what that company had once meant to me. I remembered helping her build her first pitch deck at the kitchen table. She couldn't figure out how to present the valuation numbers cleanly. I stayed up with her until 3 a.m. tweaking fonts and spacing, just to make it perfect. Now I was reviewing metrics for talent reduction, redlining underperformers, and repositioning teams she used to manage. Funny how life redraws maps when you stop begging for directions. I started getting questions from mutual friends. "Did you know about the acquisition ahead of time? Is it true you're one of the partners now? Was this all part of some master plan?" I kept my answers brief, polite, vague. Let them wonder. Word got back to her eventually. Of course it did. She emailed me 2 weeks after that hallway encounter. The subject line was just my name. The message, a single paragraph. "I know I was cruel. I thought you were safe, predictable. I didn't realize I was holding the blueprint of something bigger in my hands." I let it slip through my fingers. I don't expect forgiveness. But I see it now, Nate. I really do. I didn't respond. Some things don't require closure. Some wounds heal best without the scalpel of words reopening them. I started speaking at conferences, writing, mentoring. I wasn't trying to become some self-made guru. That was never the goal. But people were curious about how I'd scaled fast, moved smart, stayed silent. They didn't know what built me wasn't ambition. It was heartbreak. It was humiliation, betrayal, the kind that leaves you sleepless at 2 a.m. staring at your ceiling wondering if you were ever really seen at all. I wasn't building an empire to prove her wrong. I was building it to finally believe I was right about myself. It's strange how grief changes shape when you stop feeding it. For the first 6 months after the divorce, I used to check her social media every few days. The photos, the trips, the captions about thriving and reinvention. Then, one day, I just didn't. I stopped needing to measure my worth against her visibility. And something shifted. The silence between us became less about what was lost and more about what I was gaining. The space, the focus, the version of myself that had been buried under all the compromise. Turns out, when you stop trying to be someone's stepping stone, you start discovering how solid your own ground really is. 6 months after the acquisition, I got a call from a recruiter. Apparently, she'd applied for a director role at a mid-sized competitor. Her name popped up during background checks. They wanted to know if I could verify her employment dates and general character. I paused for a long moment. Then I said, "She's smart, driven. She's not afraid to take risks. But she has a tendency to burn bridges she thinks she'll never need again." The recruiter thanked me. I never found out if she got the job. Didn't want to. That winter, I bought a lake house. Not because I needed it, but because I wanted space to breathe. One morning, I sat on the dock wrapped in a thick sweater, coffee in hand, and thought about the version of me that used to pace that tiny apartment, hoping she'd text back during her business trips. The man who felt like he had to earn a place at his own dinner table. I mourned him, not because I missed who he was, but because I was proud he made it through. People don't talk enough about the quiet kind of healing. The kind that doesn't scream or post status updates. The kind that builds spreadsheets at midnight while the person you love plans their exit. The kind that looks like endurance, but is actually transformation. One night in early spring, I ran into her again. Random. At a restaurant uptown, waiting for a table. She was alone. Wearing a red coat, I remembered buying her for her 30th birthday. She looked surprised. "Nate," she said, voice soft, cautious. I nodded. "Hey." There was a beat. Then, "You look good." "So do you." She fiddled with the strap of her purse. "I've been rebuilding. Slowly." I didn't ask for details. Didn't know her that. She glanced down, then back up. "Do you ever think about it? Us?" I sipped my drink. "Sometimes. Not the way you probably mean." She nodded. I figured. Then she said something that stayed with me for a long time. "You always saw something in me I didn't see in you." It wasn't an apology. Not quite. But it was something. "I hope you see it now," I said. "I do," she whispered. "Too late, but I do." As I left that night, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel sadness, either. I felt clean. Like the part of me that had needed her recognition had finally let go of the hunger. And that was freedom. There's this phrase I heard once. Success is the best revenge. But I don't believe that. Success, if you do it right, isn't revenge. It's recovery. It's rebuilding. It's remembering who you are without needing someone else to validate it. It's also quiet. Strangely so. You imagine that once you've made it, whatever it is for you, there'll be fireworks. Closure. Applause. But when I finally stood at the helm of what people now call my empire, there was none of that. Just me. Just the echo of every long night, every overlooked effort, every time someone called me a stepping stone and expected me to be grateful for the weight of their shoes on my back. A year after the acquisition, I launched my own firm. A hybrid advisory and investment group that supports early-stage founders who don't have the right last name or the right zip code. We grew fast. Quietly, again. That's how I like it. I saw her name come up once in a regional pitch competition. She was consulting for a small fashion startup, using a new last name now. I wondered if she'd married again or just trying to rebrand. She didn't win the pitch, but she looked good up there. Confident. Like someone who'd been humbled and maybe learned something from it. I didn't approach her. Not because I was bitter, but because there was nothing left that needed to be said. Some stories end not with a bang, but with a silence that feels like peace. I kept building. Not to outrun her memory, but to honor the version of myself that almost didn't make it out of that marriage hole. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since college. One entry stands out, written in block letters at the top of the page. "You are not just a bridge to someone else's ambition." I read it to myself on mornings when the past whispers a little louder than usual. Sometimes I get asked, usually by younger founders, "How did you stay so calm when everything was falling apart?" And I tell them the truth. I didn't stay calm. I just stayed quiet. There's a difference. Calm is a feeling. Quiet is a decision. I made the choice to respond with strategy instead of emotion. To channel heartbreak into systems. Betrayal into spreadsheets. Grief into grit. Not because I didn't feel the sting, but because I knew screaming into the void wouldn't fix anything. Building something lasting? That would. A few months ago, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. But the handwriting was unmistakable. Her. It wasn't long. Just a single page. I still have it in the drawer of my office desk. It reads, "Nate, I've thought about reaching out 100 times. I never knew what to say. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect this to matter to you. But I want you to know I was wrong. About you. About me. About everything. I thought power meant winning. I thought love was something I could sacrifice for the climb. But now that I'm down here, looking up, I see it. You were never the stepping stone. You were the whole foundation. And I cracked it trying to stand taller. I hope you found what you deserved. I hope you're free. I'm sorry. L." I folded it neatly. Didn't cry. Didn't burn it. I just placed it beside my journal entry, under the line about the bridge. Not for revenge, not even for closure, just as a reminder of the road I walked. The truth is, I'm not angry anymore. I'm grateful. She taught me something I couldn't have learned otherwise. What happens when you give someone your blueprint, and they decide they're the architect of your life? She taught me how to take the plans back, how to draw new lines, how to build again. Only this time, for me. I don't need her validation anymore. But some nights, when the city's quiet and the wind brushes against the windows of my penthouse office, I think about her. Not with longing, not with bitterness, but with a kind of soft, distant hope. Hope that she's healing too, that she's building again. Maybe not an empire, but something that feels whole. Because if there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's that we don't need to destroy each other to grow. We just need to stop mistaking each other for steps on a ladder. I once told myself I'd never look back, but I do. Occasionally, briefly, just long enough to nod at the man I used to be, the man who got told he was a stepping stone, and smile at the man I became. And then I keep walking. Forward. Always forward.